Today we have a very special guest on The Voice Choice. She is an entertainment industry entrepreneur, a voice talent, a voiceover coach, and a specialist in medical narration. And we welcome to the show Ann Ganguzza from Los Angeles. Hi, Ann.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
And thanks for joining us. Before we get into all of the specifics, let's let the audience hear some of your tongue-twisting dialogue.
Essential thrombocythemia, primary myelofibrosis, and polycythemia vera are Philadelphia chromosome-negative myeloproliferative neoplasms. Less common include the hypereosinophilic syndromes and mastocytosis. Let's look inside the kidneys to see how they secrete hydrogen ions into the filtrate and conserve bicarbonate by reabsorbing it. Most of this reabsorption occurs in the proximal convoluted tubule. Data from pharmacodynamic and clinical studies show that 300 milligrams of canagliflozin delays intestinal glucose absorption and reduces postprandial glucose excursions. Your mission has never been more critical. From the moment you entered your chosen profession to this very day, 3M has been by your side, helping you transform outcomes for your patients.
That is a lot of complicated dialogue. How in the world did you get in medical narration?
Well, that's a really good question. I actually absolutely love medical narration. And when I went to school, I graduated with a degree in engineering. And my first job out of college was a biomechanical engineer for Stryker. And so I designed prosthetic hip and knee implants. And so that kind of became my career in healthcare, technology, and healthcare. And I absolutely loved being able to have a hand in helping people to feel good, to feel better. And it really was something that I loved at the time. And I ultimately, had a career in that, and then went onto a career in education and technology, and ultimately started doing voiceover work part-time. And because I had the background in the medical industry, I really fell into medical narration and absolutely loved it.
You speak about becoming the voice of reason. Why don't you dialogue that philosophy for us?
Well, the voice of reason is when I'm voicing something in a medical format that is helpful and informational for the listener, and also in the same regard, understanding where they're at maybe mentally when they're listening to this. They could, need information quickly. They could need compassion. They could need, somebody empathizing with their situation. And so I think the voice of reason is one where I can really understand who my audience is and speak to them through my voice.
But it's not the type of voiceover that a lot of people are in. Just to let you know, I went through 15 or 20 people to meet you. Why is it so rare?
Well, I think a lot of people are scared of the terminology. That's a big thing. I think people are just scared of the big words. And the interesting part about that is that there's really so much more to medical narration than just big words. There's all types of medical narration. That's just one part of it, is the complicated words. There's so many other aspects where your voice can lend itself in the healthcare industry. There's, the complicated things, let's say drug names or procedures. But then there's, maybe telephone on hold recordings that can put people at ease while they're waiting to speak to a doctor or to speak to a nurse. There can be simple videos that you watch in the waiting room. And so not everything is complicated. And there's just many, many different aspects to it. And so I think if people were to know all of that about the medical narration industry, they might not be so, timid, or they might try more of it.
I think that you told me that it took you 10 years to get to it.
Well,
Isn't that about right?
I always say that, my overnight success took at least 10 years. So, there was definitely there was training involved. There was hours and hours and hours of practice. And even, now if I'm doing a medical narration, I don't know all the words. And so, I wish I did, but I don't. That requires research. It requires, looking up pronunciations. It requires practicing them as well so that they can, flow out of your mouth effortlessly. And so there is a lot of work to be done in medical narration. That might be another issue that people might shy away from medical narration, because there is that kind of homework you have to do before you can sound like an authority or sound confident when you're speaking with medical terms.
Well, let's take a break right now for our sponsor, the Voice Shop and Voice Shop Coaching in New York. And when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Ann in Los Angeles on medical narration.
The Voice Shop is the proud sponsor of the Voice Choice Vodcast, where you get to see and hear the inspirational talent behind the microphone. Shift your voice into high gear with professional training and coaching at the Voice Shop. You can save $20 off any purchase with promo code CHOICE at checkout. Visit us at voiceshopcoaching.com.
That was a commercial about the importance of education in voiceover. What's your perspective on how important it is to continue to be educated and to continue to study?
It goes back to, I guess, the way that I live my life. I love learning new things, and I believe that I'm a lifelong learner. And I think that also pertains to the voiceover industry, because you can always learn something new and you can always improve upon your performance. So I think that it's important for voice talent to really continue their education as they continue their career in voiceover, because trends change, voice types change, genres change. And so it's always good to keep yourself up to date. And as well as, I think we can always improve our delivery. And again, those styles change. And I think what's really called for these days is something that's authentic and believable. And probably one of the most difficult things for any voice talent to do is to take words off of a page that they didn't think about or didn't write and make them sound as if they're natural and believable and just, coming out of their mouth. So that is a skill that I think many of us spend our careers perfecting.
It's not as easy as you make it sound. What can somebody do to get into medical narration if they, for some reason, find what we're talking about is to be interesting, something they would want to do? How can they get into it?
Well, I think first of all, coaching is very important. Again, doing something every day that's voiceover related, whether you're doing this part-time or full-time, I think it's important every day to practice, to read scripts. And also, I think working one-on-one with a coach is very important. That can help you, that extra set of ears that can help you to make sure that you are conveying and performing to what is expected of you that would be believable and authentic, because it's very difficult for you to develop an ear for your own voiceover. It's always helpful when you have somebody else that's listening. So coaching is most definitely highly recommended to get into the medical narration field, because you want to work with somebody that does this work on a consistent basis so that they know who are the companies that are hiring, what are they looking for, what has changed over the years, and that person that you work with can help guide you to get into the career easier than you would try to, get into it yourself, for sure.
You're also a coach, right?
I am.
Mm-hmm. And how does this audience find you?
Well, I'm pretty much all over the internet. So, and Ganguzza.com, you can absolutely find out any information that you want, information about coaching and that sort of thing from my website. And, I'm happy to help. I'm also a voice talent, so I divide my time between coaching and doing voice work myself. And I think also doing voice work keeps me on the pulse of the industry and keeps me current with what's out there. A good percentage of my work is medical narration, so I'm continually doing the work and actually working with companies and understanding what it is that they're looking for. I'm doing live directed sessions. I'm doing, self-directed sessions. So I bring all of that to my students.
All right, well, we'll take a break right now for our sponsor, Shure Microphones. And when we come back, Ann and I will talk about the importance of the microphone.
This segment of The Voice Choice is sponsored by Shure. And this is the voice of God. Actually, I'm not God at all. I'm Eric Holloway, a voice actor. And when I want to sound my very best, I depend on Shure Microphone. It delivers the sound I want. So, how am I doing?
So, Ann, how important is the microphone?
Well, I think that the microphone is important as a conduit to deliver in the way that your listener needs to hear the information being delivered. So the microphone is important as a delivery mechanism, but really the most important thing is your performance behind the microphone.
And the emotion behind it.
Yes.
I've heard you speak about the importance of the emotion behind it before.
It is. It's so important. I think even with something like medical narration, where most people feel that maybe there isn't any emotion to it and it's simply information delivery, I always like to think of who is it that's listening on the other end. Is it a patient that might be, has a symptom and they're worried about it, or maybe they're taking new medication and they want to know if there's any side effects, or what to do if maybe they're not feeling right after taking it. So I think that in order for the message to be received, it's really important that you have empathy. Always approach the copy with empathy. So that's knowing what your listener is going through and working with that through your own point of view and communicating that to the listener on the other side. And that's what really engages people, and it makes them want to listen to you more. I think the worst thing we can do is read the PowerPoint, so to speak. If you've ever been to a presentation and someone is standing in front of the room and they're reading off of the PowerPoint, that really doesn't make for a very engaging presentation. So I always try to talk directly to that one person that's listening. And I think that keeps it more engaging, it keeps it more interesting. And then taking those words and putting my own spin on it, especially if it's education, if it's medical education, or it's, even if it's a soft sell by a medical device company, whatever it is, knowing that what you are saying is going to help that other person. And I think it has to come from a point of, how can I help my listener? And that really takes it in a different emotional direction, rather than, it's not just a hard sell. It's not just a word after word after word, information delivery mechanism. It's really talking to someone. And I think we all want that human connection. So if you can, behind the mic, create that human connection, that's going to really, I think, sit well with your listener and make your client want to hire you again and again and again.
Before we go, any parting interesting story about that copy, how it looks sometimes, anything that sticks in your mind as being one of the most challenging gigs you ever recorded?
Oh, goodness. Well, definitely the challenging gigs with the words. What I typically do before any recording of medical narration copy is I take any of the words that I don't know how to pronounce. I'll go look them up, and I love Google. I love the internet, and so I can look them up and listen to the pronunciation, and then I'll actually mark up my copy with the phonetic spelling of it, and I'll highlight it in yellow so that my eye goes to that word, and it allows me to say that word as if I say it all the time. And that, I think, is one of the most difficult things. And probably, one time I was, just narrating some copy that was given to me, and I had the name of a drug, and I actually pronounced it incorrectly because it was a new drug, and there wasn't a lot of information out there on it. And so the problem with that is usually when it's the name of something like that, it gets repeated over and over and over again in a script. So I had probably had about 100 instances of this particular drug, and it was just a slight mispronunciation, but I had to go back and re-record the whole thing again because I had mispronounced it 100 times incorrectly.
That's fascinating. Well, Anna, I certainly appreciate you joining us here today on The Voice Choice, talking about the very complex world of medical narration. What's next for you?
It's a continual cycle of servicing clients that keep coming back, which I love the medical industry because a lot of times if they find you and they like what you're doing, they will keep coming back. They're very loyal, but also finding new clients and learning new things. So for me, every time I do a medical narration, it's an education. And I think a lot of that comes out in the voice as well because I love to learn. And so that comes out in my delivery. That kind of, I'm kind of excited to learn, and I'm excited to share that information. So I'm looking forward to more medical narration gigs, that's for sure. And I love working with students to help them also find the love in medical narration, just as I do.
Well, it's clear to us that you do love it and you are very proficient at it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on The Voice Choice, and we will be listening for you out there in the world, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.